Well, good morning. This is Mike Tabor. We're going to go ahead and get started with today's Keystroke Live. Today we're going to be talking about the multi-store purchase orders. Um, and as normal, every week we do a Keystroke Live on Wednesdays from 10 o'clock in the morning till whenever, Mountain Time. And today is multi-store purchase orders. The first Wednesday of every month, we usually have the President Michael Gabb speak, and he'll be here next week. So I'll go ahead and get started on multi-store purchase orders. A couple things to kind of reiterate that besides having multi-store, to use the multi-store purchase order function, the main store has to have an advanced Keystroke POS license, and it's always recommended that the main store does have that for many of the other tools they can use. The stores are not required to have advanced POS to receive a multi-store order. It never hurts to have advanced everywhere so everyone can use all the tools. The multi-store purchase orders is a nice fancy way of creating purchase orders or invoices or a reserved order for multiple locations. And the goal here is that a lot of times you can get a price break or price discount by ordering from a vendor quantities that will give you a discount where you can actually send them either to the warehouse or you can send them to each of the individual store. And our program does have a way of printing out a multi-store purchase order that would show each of the store's addresses. In our example, we kind of use different transaction numbers to use for multi-store purchase orders. It's just kind of an easy way for us human beings to visually look at a number and go, oh, that was a multi-store purchase order. I didn't do it here. It was generated for me. We're going to go over the allotments grid, and that's a way we actually handle. It's kind of like a 2x2 grid on stores and quantities. So you add up all the stores. And in our little example here, we talk about using the reserved mode. It's a great tool if you want to start learning the process and creating orders and then not have it actually affect the store. The store will get the multi-store order, but it will be reserved, so it won't be changing things like the on-order quantities and last cost, last average cost, and so forth. So it's kind of a good way to do some testing. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into Keystroke here, and we'll go ahead and change my screen. And at this time, by the way, I was going to mute the crowd here. In case anyone has a question, they can go ahead and use the chat button down below. You've all been very nice and quiet, but we'll go ahead and mute the crowd. If you need to ask a question, please do with the chat, and then we'll open up for questions afterwards. So I'm here in Keystroke Point of Sale. I'm in actually the Purchase Manager module, version 8, of course. And let me show you the feature and some of the settings. Of course, in preparation for this, I already have 3 data sets. I have myself as the data directory, which is the warehouse. I have a Store 1 folder and a Store 2 folder. Those have already been set up, and I've already been to Store Link to set up the multi-store. And if you need help with that, just give us a call. But you do need to set up and have a license for multi-store to actually get into Store Link and do the setup. First thing you do is in Purchase Manager here is go to the Parameters section. So under the Transaction menu, the program already knows if you've been into StoreLink and have set up stores. You would go to the Parameters option, and notice that there's another choice at the bottom below Macros. It says Multi-Store. So I'm going to select that, and at this time, it's going to show you some settings, and we can actually change the list of stores here. If I click on Edit Stores, it actually pulls up the list that you do see in StoreLink. If I were to F3 on the warehouse, for instance, it shows me some information. I have not gone through the length of setting up an address for the warehouse and so forth. The important part here is we have a store ID and a store name and the data folder. And down at the bottom right, this will come into play that says never use on multi-store orders. In my scenario, I have a warehouse that holds inventory, and I have 2 stores that actually have their own inventory. I can purchase for the warehouse, or I can purchase for store 1 or store 2. If in your scenario you have a data depository, let's call it the data folder, that really is a virtual store that only holds information like your inventory records. It holds a consolidation of transactions, and it allows you to simplify the process of doing updates for inventory. That would be what I call a virtual store, where in fact there really is no physical location for it. It does not have any quantity on hands itself, but in my explanation today, the warehouse, the data folder, actually does have quantity on hands. So I'm back to the list of stores. I just clicked on that edit list of stores. I'm not going to change anything now. First step you have to do to turn all this on is turn on the button that says Enable Multi-Store Purchase Orders. The stores that do this, sometimes you might want to start in the new multi-store order starts in reserved mode. Turning this on will actually be a good way for you to test and practice the process, see how the actual transactions get delivered to the stores. Now keep in mind, in this scenario for multi-store, we're using an idea of a remote desktop where there's one server holding data folders for all stores. All the stores remote in using RDP, remote desktop, to remote into their data, and that's a real-time, live, all-the-time process. You can set up polling scripts to actually create POs and then send them out to stores if you use a different process like an FTP polling or some kind of dial-up process. I won't say dial-up, but more of a process in place that's a nightly polling. It's just a little more complex. This really works great in an RDP environment. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to turn on default to multi-store mode. I'm going to turn off the reserve mode. That is kind of good for just doing your practice and so forth. So we're going to use these settings right here. And I'm going to leave the defaults as they are already. So I'm going to say OK. Now if I were to come into Purchase Manager fresh, or if I just go to Transaction Clear, you will notice that the purchase screen will refresh as if I came in the first time. And this is a process that we are going to use. I'm going to move this down just a little bit here. I've already changed the next number. Multi-store orders and purchase orders or invoices can have a different numbering scheme. So all you need to do in this case is to click on the number, put in what you want it to start at. Let's use that number there, 500,000. When I say OK, it says, well, I like to change the counter, and it's going to save it just for multi-store purchase orders. And then this allows you to actually, let's say if you're at a store that has been doing purchase orders, they see purchase order number 1000, 1001, 1002, and then all of a sudden they see one that says 500,001, 500,002. They will know immediately with a visual cue that says, oh, this purchase order I received from the main store. I didn't generate it here. That's kind of the whole intent of that. So as normally, let's go ahead and I'm going to show you the allotments grid here. I'm just going to pick a customer, a vendor. Let's just go ahead and select this one here. I'm going to kind of do this manually. I'm going to bring up a list of items here. And when I hit enter on the item, this is what we call the multi-store allotments, or the grid. And it tells me what the quantity on hands are at all the stores. And in my case, I really did copy the data, so you'll see 20, 20, and 20 as my quantity on hand. It shows my minimum as 15 and so forth. So I really haven't set this up to start an auto order kind of process, but it really works great for that too. But let's say we know we need more of these at store 1 and store 2, so I can just use my arrow keys with my mouse and move down to different fields. And I can say, well, I want to order 15 more here, and that's going to bring my new quantity on hand to 35. And you notice I can have choices here. I can go ahead and I can change the quantity to order, or I can just say, well, I want 40 at this store, and it will change the order quantity to 20. And let's say the warehouse has enough, and then later on I can actually show you a transfer to transfer from the warehouse to different stores, and that allows you to do one transaction for multiple stores in a store transfer. In the past, we used to use the StoreLink module to do store transfers, but if you wanted to send 5 items to 15 stores, you'd have to create 15 store transfers individually instead of using this kind of grid. So let's say I'm comfortable with this, and you do have an option to change minimum quantities and order quantities right here, which will affect the actual inventory record on the store's number. Let's say, in this case, this store, they sell a lot of these. I want my minimum to always be at, let's say, 40. And when I order things, I might want to order 10 every time. So besides creating a purchase order for 2 different stores, it's going to create 2 different POs for 2 different subdirectories on my server. It's also going to update the minimum quantity and the order quantity for this location, because I might know from past history or running sales reports that store 2 sells more of this item than store 1, and so forth and so on. So I'll go ahead and just looking at this, I can either click the X and hit yes to save it, or just using the F10 button, it's going to tell me the reorder quantities were changed in one of the stores, and would I like to make that change, and I am going to say yes. So here's what it's done. It's actually created a purchase order that you can send to the vendor for 35. And we can set it up to use a print button to print to, let's say, a PDF, or email it to the vendor. And we can send it to them, and it's going to say send 20 of them to store 2, and it'll have the address for store 2, and send 15 of them to store 1. And hopefully your vendor likes the idea that you're purchasing more, and they can work out the shipping to 2 different locations. If you think you've made an error in the stock number, you can always highlight it, the item, and hit the F3 key, and it brings up the grid as normal. And so you could say, well, I really meant to order more here. I wanted to order 30 at this store and make my minimum 50 with an order quantity of 20. So I'm just looking at these numbers here. I think I like it the way it is. I'm going to hit F10. It's going to ask me again, would I like to actually post the changes to the minimum and order quantities to the store 2, is what it's saying. Even though it says change in one store, it says one of the stores. So we'll say yes. So now I've ordered 45 of stock number 100. I'm going to go ahead and save this as notice it says a multi-store order. It doesn't say reserved at the top. This is actually going to go in and make some changes to the store. I'm not going to pay for anything now. And I've also set up this multi-store order. I'm going to go ahead and print this. I don't have any addresses set up, so let's take a look at it anyhow, see what it looks like. So here it shows to the vendor, if we're going to send this document, and hopefully you can all see this, I think you can, that we're going to buy 45 of this Tony Hawk Pro Skater DVD, and we're going to send 15 of them to store 1 and 30 of them to store 2. There is a page 2 on here, and notice that the store information just shows store 1, store 2. Below these numbers would have been the shipping address or where they're going to ship to. So based on what they look at on the first page, they're going to say, okay, 15 of them are going to store 1. So they would look at this store information, which is on page 2 of this order, and it's done that way on purpose. And there would be an address here, and I have not spent the time to set it up, but you would have 2 different addresses. That tells the vendor where to ship the different quantities. And I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then I'm going to open up Store 2's data here, and I'll have to change screens here. This is Store 2's data. I'm just opening it up for the first time. And of course I'm already running multi-store, so the stock numbers already exist. I've already run store update and things like that, so everything is up to speed. If I now go to Purchase Manager, and they don't really get to create multi-store purchase orders. It has to be done at the main location or the warehouse. If I go to, Edit Print, Order, we'll just do it by number. You're going to see here's a list of orders. These are existing orders that were already in there from a few days ago. There's also a brand new order, and notice the number. It's number 500,000. And when I go ahead and hit enter on this, notice that this store has one order for a quantity of 30. So its inventory has been updated. If I up to this and F3 once, you'll notice that the on order quantity on the right side below quantity on hand says 30, so it's going to make a total of 50. I believe if I look at the order data here, the minimum quantity has been changed to 50, and the order quantity, next time I order, I'm going to buy this in bulks of lots of 20 every time. So this has been updated. And all the store has to do now is receive the items. So in theory, the vendor gets the order for multiple stores. They give you a discount, hopefully, on the price, the cost. And I would have put that in if I did get a discount. And then when the parts actually arrive on the dock at store number 2, all they have to do is come in here and receive the order of 30. And they can choose to use payments or no payments. This could have been on account, or I could have tendered the payment beforehand. Or I can just save it. I'm going to go ahead and just save it. They can print their own purchase order if they like to say this is what I received. And then they hit save. So going back to my master database here, we're still in the multi-store purchase order mode. And let's double check what we've been talking about, kind of for clarity here. So we talked about multi-store purchase orders requires advanced POS. It generates purchase orders or invoices. If in a rare case, you have all this shit, maybe you're a company that says, hey, I need to order 100 of these, send 50 to each of the 2 stores, and you get a call in a couple days that, hey, we got the orders, there's already 50 from each store, and you're going in for the first time into Keystroke to tell Keystroke, hey, I've got some orders. You can actually just make a purchase invoice. You don't have to make it an order. You can turn on the invoice mode for multi-store orders, and then it would just receive them automatically for them. They don't even have to go into purchasing at all at the store if that's what you want to have happen. We're also going to talk about in a second here about how you would do a transfer from one store to another. And this is kind of a great way to kind of split your warehouse quantities out and get them out in the field. Again, I have a 2-store example. This really comes into play when you have 5 and 10 stores that are running Keystroke. We talked about the different transaction numbers. We showed you the allotments grid. The reserve mode, we really didn't play with that, but we're going to kind of show you how you can do a store transfer. Let me just move on to the next page here and see what we get. We do have one custom form or one form file that we use. It's called MSP11LU. It has it's a laser type of a printout, and it shows the unit quantity in case you're doing cases and so forth. And you can also just print orders for the individual stores if needed. We can go into the store and print those, or you can have a different print button for each. There's some notes that we wanted to bring out that you should edit these multi-store purchase orders with care, meaning if a store 2 just received 30 and you went in and changed the order from 30 to 40 or 50, then it would go in and actually back order that item on that same order number. So you would say, it would look like I've ordered 50, I've received 30. The store may not know about that. They may think that that order is done. So there must be a process in place that you have to kind of tell the stores, hey, I've edited this order. Or you can have them delete what they've already received and edit the purchase order, and they'll bring over a new copy of it You just have to kind of do that with care. I'm going to show you here in Keystroke how you can do a store transfer to different stores. I think I'm in the wrong store, just based on the color I set up earlier. Yep. All right, this is the MultiStore store here, the data folder. And what we're going to do here is do kind of a transfer. Now, you don't have to put up a vendor. You don't have to select a vendor. It's not required. You could actually set up a vendor if you wanted to and call it, transfer, and call it warehouse transfer. Or you can call it store 0 or something of that nature. This is only going to be for a reference point for reporting or filtering later on. But let's say now I would like to transfer some material from one store to the other. Let's go ahead and use that stock number 100 again. And notice now that my quantity on hands for store 2 is 50. And maybe I made a mistake and I needed to send about half of them everywhere. Plus I have 20 in the warehouse. So I can say, well, number 1, I'm going to take 20 out of the warehouse. And I'm going to take 20 more out of store 2. And I'm going to put in 40 into store 1. So notice how this is going to change my new quantity on hands. My warehouse will be depleted. Store 2 will be back to a quantity of 30, but it's going to ask them to order them because of the minimum quantity of 30. Again, I could say, well, I think I made a mistake here. I'm going to change the minimum to 30, which is allowable, or maybe it's 20. And they can sell 10 before you have to worry about it. But maybe store 1 needs to have about 50 all the time, but because I know a big event's going on, I'm going to send a lot over to that store. So I can kind of change this here, and when I buy these, I might want to change this to 10 and maybe only order 5 there. So here's an idea that store 1 now is the busy store for this item. I'm going to make sure that they have 75 on hand. When it gets below 50, I'm going to order 10. So that's what this is all about right here. And this is really a fancy way to do a transfer. And when I go ahead and ship these, actually I'm going to create orders for them. I'm going to take them out of the warehouse. I'm going to have store 2. They're going to have an order that they're going to have to fill. It's a negative order that says I'm going to send them to store 1 because I'll be printing this out for them. I'm going to go ahead and hit F10. And it tells me I've made some changes to the inventory records for 2 stores. And here's the quantity is 0. You look at this and go, well, how does that transfer all that information? Well, what it's going to do, it's going to make purchase orders for all the locations. So and this is going to be 500,001. So I'm going to go ahead and hit F10. I'm just going to go ahead and save this. There is no payments involved. Hit save. So now if I go under transaction, this is in the master location here, right? I didn't print anything, but if I want to edit print order by number, the actual warehouse transfer has an order. They need to actually take action and do something. So they're going to actually say, oh, I have to take 20 out of this. And if I did print the store PO like I mentioned or showed you before, it would say these 20 have to go to store 1. They would come in and say, okay, I'm taking my 20 out of stock now, and I know to send these to store 1. They're just going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to go to store number 2 now. Give me a moment. All right, this is store number 2. They're remoting in, and they got a call, or they got a PO faxed to them, or they got an email with a PDF on it that says they need to process an order. And it's going to say, take some inventory out of your stock and send it to store 1. They're going to also edit their order. They're going to go round up the material. And they're going to say, oh, I need to take 20 out of my stock and send that to store 1. And this is from store 2. They don't have to worry about any payments for this transaction, and they're going to save it. So now, in a sense, what we're doing is with one transaction, Again, this is only 2 stores, but if you had 25 stores or 10 stores, it would be easy to manipulate quantities around as needed without having to make so many different transfers. Now the magic is we go back to the main store. This is the MultiStore store. Just for the sake of discussion here and examples, I'm going to bring up stock number 100 again. And now notice that the new, the quantity on hands now, there's 0 at the warehouse. There's, oh, and then by the way, store 1 has not received these items. Store 2 is shipped, let me say it this way, warehouses ship them the items. They're in transit, whether they're in the local van or they actually put them on a FedEx and send them on out. Store 2 has taken their quantity out, and then Store 1 is going to receive 2 different packages, one from the warehouse and one from Store 1. I have not yet opened up Store 1, so let's go ahead and do that and see what Store 1 has to show. Let's see if I got this right. Yep, it's the right color. Color scheme is how I'm going with what I know. So Store 1 has been sitting around. They haven't been paying much attention to these transfers, but now it's time things start arriving on their dock. So they have to go to Edit Print, Orders, and they have 2 open orders. One is from the vendor that's going to ship them something, and one is the warehouse transfer. So I'm going to look at the warehouse transfer here, and notice that there should be 40 coming to me. They may have received 20 from Store 2 first, and they're waiting for the warehouse to send it to them. So they go ahead and save this as the purchase order. And now they look at, okay, there's 20 more coming. And if I look at it in this mode, I can see the total order was for 40. I've already received 20. And I'm going through some of our multiple screens here. So they might have gotten the other 20 from the warehouse, and they're going to receive those on a different invoice. This is going to be number B. And let's say they have not received anything from the main vendor, the real vendor. So here's a couple invoices they've created. They received 20 from the Store 2, and they received 20 from the warehouse. And I use the vendor as warehouse transfer. It could be called stores transfer or all stores transfer, because you really can transfer from Store 15 to Store 4. It doesn't have to always come from the warehouse. And you could actually set up 2 POs if you want to make it more clear. But those invoices have been completed and received. So kind of in a nutshell, we'll go back to my slideshow, is that we've kind of talked about the MultiStore PO form that we have, and you can customize this for your own needs. We can also print orders for the individual stores. You could just go in and just, like I pulled it up, for every store can print their own order. Or in a remote desktop environment, I could have opened up on my own machine Store 1's order and actually PDF'd it to them or sent them an email. We haven't talked about editing, except for just take care and understand that if I start editing an order that's already been received, you're going to have some mathematical complications. You're going to have to understand that, wait, I just added 20 to that, so now that's an open order. These people need to know to look at open orders. And then transferring. We just went through the simple steps on transferring. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the crowd here and let them ask any questions if you have some, and we'll go through that. So if anyone has a question, they can ask it now. Oh, I love the silence. Well, if there's nothing more to talk about, we're going to have this YouTube video available. We'll post it.
Yep.
And so if you ever want to review it, you can always look it up online. And just to let you know, remember, next week we have Keystroke Live. It's going to be Mike Gibb doing his first Wednesday. All right, well, thank you very much, and have a great day. If you have any questions, give us a call here at SBS.